Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me to speak with you about Noah. It's for me, it's a passion and a love, and that's why I've been involved with the foundation all these years. When you think about Noah and his past, his path, consider this: that he was born in 1917 and grew up at the height of Jim Crow in the U.S. Went to high school and college, taught at high school manual arts shop, and then the Second World War happens and he joins the armed forces as a CB, and CBs were like the engineers. They built airfields and accommodations for soldiers in the South Pacific. He comes back to the United States and takes a course at Atlanta University in social work, gets his MSW, and eventually makes his way out to California. He works as a social worker in California for a few years and then realizes that social work is just not going to do anything. And one day gets up from his office, leaves, walks down the street and enrolls in Chouinard Art School, which subsequently becomes Cal Arts. And at the age of 40, he receives a BFA, which would be his third degree as a black man in America, which in and of itself is an incredible accomplishment, especially in those days. And I think that his work as a CB and an industrial arts teacher was something that took over this idea of creativity, even though when you think about building airfields, that stuff is as a creative process. He's asked to create an arts program in Watts, and that becomes the beginning of the Watts Towers Arts Center with Judson Powell. And you know, for the next many years, he's making art. He gets involved at the community level, at the governmental level, and then retires and pursues his own personal work. Always connected to the idea of the creative process. Always connected to the idea of giving voice to people who don't necessarily have voice through various means, and developing a philosophy of art as a problem-solving activity.
As co-founder and director of the Watts Towers Art Center, Purifoy responded to the 1965 Watts Rebellion by creating the landmark exhibition 69 Signs of Neon, using charred debris collected from the streets. What inspired that body of work?
Everything good so far for you folks?
Yeah.
I'm glad.
Hey, we're in Norm's in Southern California having breakfast, so this is really good.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad. So I'm an old guy, so I need to write a few notes for myself. And just to say that Judson Powell, who was the co-founding director of Watts Towers, and Noah, Judson pulled some work, some of the residue of the Watts Rebellion, and Noah, and they started kind of putting those things together, and subsequently brought in a number of other artists to create what becomes 66 Signs of Neon, which at the time was a multi-generational, multi-gender group project, right? And this is a quote from Noah I thought would be very good. He says that 66 Signs of Neon essentially was creating a new form of communication for people who otherwise would not or could not communicate to confront what had happened in Watts. And this is, it began as an expression of the necessity for art education, asserting that art must affect change in human behavior, not just offer aesthetic experience. And this is something that Noah follows through on throughout his art making, that the reuse of used materials or junk, kind of giving them second life, a new way of looking at things, and how that relates to our lives and how we look at ourselves and how we can change. So basically the creative process and how the creative process affects humanity. For example, creativity begins with a chemical reaction in the brain. Something happens. And as an artist, we take that one reaction and we make a mark, or do a movement, or write a note, or kind of bring some people together. And then we step back and look at that, and then another reaction takes place. And we build upon those things. We create relationships between either form, people, ideas, their connectivity. And that's what 66 Signs of Neon really was about, is that kind of connecting the community that Noah felt couldn't respond directly with making work about what happened.
In 1976, Noah Purifoy was appointed to the California Arts Council, where he helped launch pioneering programs. And how did that public policy experience influence his artistic practice and broader philosophy?
Well, I think it's the reverse. Is his artistic practice influenced his public policy. And I say that because when he was co-founder at Watts Towers, one of the things he created there was a program to help people who dropped out of high school get their diploma and then move forward educationally. So a lot of people said Noah stopped making art when he joined the Arts Council, but I contend that he didn't stop making art. He was still making art. Those programs are art in and of themselves. They call it relational aesthetics, right? Joseph Beuys, for example, is another. This is a person who kind of looked at art, I believe, in the same way, right? That, you know, building community. So the idea of the practice, the creative practice, is inherent in this kind of educational idea, and bringing artists into these situations or environments that, you know, didn't have that interaction or connectivity before, was very important to him. You know, for example, and let me just also say that those programs are still in existence, and they were some of the first, if not the first, programs of those kind in the country.
Yeah, it's remarkable.
Yeah. And this is something, when I first heard him speak, I was just so fascinated by this idea of what he had done, because my background is in community arts as well, in the South Bronx in the 70s, with fashion and moda, and my partner, who is Austrian, Stefan Eins, we made this place. We took a burnt out building, put half a roof back on, some plexiglass for windows, borrowed some electricity from the city, and opened a space. And in that space, we brought together people who would not normally come together. We had people from uptown New York, downtown New York, Europe, Asia, to find a way to kind of communicate with each other through the creative process. And some of the people who came through there, besides people who you'd know, Keith Haring, Jenny Holzer, Marilyn Menta, Tom Otterness, with people who you would not necessarily know, but now you know, David Hammonds, for example, Jean-Michel Basquiat. So, you know, so like, and then those folks with the people who become the initial graffiti writers, Lee, Lady Pink, Crash, Zephyr, Core, who were teenagers at the time, who are now well-established artists internationally, who changed the world with graffiti. So you have the confluence of all those folks at Fashion Motor. That's my background. When I heard Noah talk, I realized, oh, I'm not alone. And here's somebody who's been in the trenches for decades. And it was, for me, it was a transformative moment.
Yeah, tell me a little bit more about it. How did you know, get to know him? And
I met Noah, I believe it was in 1997. Don't quote me on that. But he had a retrospective at the California Afro-American Museum in Los Angeles. And my phone was just jumping off the hook, people saying, hey, you gotta go see this exhibition. So I went down and I was blown away by Noah's work. It was so fascinating. It was, I mean, you could see everything in it. And what a lot of people don't know about Noah is that he was really well read. He was very conversant in philosophers from Kant, Heidegger, Royden, all the way down. But you could see that in the work. And that day he actually spoke. I got to hear him speak. And he went through his life, and I was shocked. I was so amazed by this person, because he had a life that I aspire to, in terms of its connectivity, in terms of it giving back, in terms of its depth and breadth, intellectually, aesthetically, and from the community point of view. But I didn't introduce myself that day. I was probably scared, to be honest with you. But in any case, I was writing reviews for Art in America at the time, and I called them and said, I'd like to review this show. They said, go ahead. So I did a really nice review of the show. And fast forward about a year or so later, the Flintridge Foundation used to award artists, a writer, educator every year with a fellowship. And I was invited to that luncheon, and Noah was getting one of those awards. And to be honest with you, I didn't even realize that at the time. And this woman comes over to me and says, she looks at my name tag, she goes, you wouldn't happen to be the Joe Lewis who wrote that review of Noah Purifoy's work in Art in America, would you? And I said, yeah. It was Sue Welsh, who was the co-founder of the foundation. And she literally took me by the ear and dragged me over to Noah's table. And we sat there and talked. And a couple weeks later, I was out in the desert. A couple weeks after that, they asked me to join the foundation. A little time after that, Richard Candida Smith, who was the director of Archives of American Art on the West Coast, who was the president at the time, retires, moves to the Bay Area, and I was asked to become the president of the foundation. And that was 25 years ago.
cool story.
And let me say, Noah was, it's very difficult to explain the presence Noah had, but let me give you the story. I brought my father and my daughter out to see Noah in the desert, and at the time he was living in the trailer. Well, let me backtrack. Noah retires, and when he retired, he didn't have enough money to live in Los Angeles anymore. He basically had Social Security, that was it. He was looking for a place to go. And Debbie Brewer, who was one of the artists in 66 Signs of Neon, invited him to go live in her son's trailer in Joshua Tree. And he took her up on the offer and immediately began making work there. So that's how that all happens. And okay, forward a little bit. I bring my daughter and father to meet him. And when he had guests, he used to bake a chicken, make some collard greens, and cornbread. We're in the kitchen in the trailer, and Noah asked my father to do something. And my father, who was born in 1920, says, "Yes, sir." And my daughter looks at me, and she mouths the word. There were 3 years difference between the two guys. And he called him sir for the rest of the day. And we were like, okay. But that's a cultural thing, you know, in the black community, right? He was my father's elder, even though it was like 3 years more. But that, you know, but that's the kind of presence Noah had. And he would call you out. If he thought you were half-stepping, he would not hold back. He called me on the carpet a couple times. Because he demanded 100% effort in everything.
Did he have, when he moved there, did he have a vision, you know, for this unique site, or how did this evolve? I mean, it's really huge. It's not a small site.
Yes. He was 72 when he moved there. The majority of the larger works he made by himself with just a little help. He had a vision, but I wouldn't say it was plotted. In other words, I wouldn't say he knew exactly what he was going to do, because he was working somewhat intuitively, but obviously with an overriding idea, an overarching idea about the work. He was looking at Cali Mesa actually as a possible place for him to go. But he started immediately making stuff. And it was, you know, he had made stuff prior to that, obviously, in the years he had been in Los Angeles. The difference was that in Los Angeles, he could find junk just by driving around. In the desert, people don't throw things away in the desert. People, they use everything, they fix everything. My father's generation was the same way. You didn't throw stuff away, you fixed it.
Yeah, my grandfather, for example, same.
Everything.
They keep it.
Yeah.
Nothing is being thrown away.
Right. Yeah, you know, the work evolved organically.
And it's like a city. I mean, you had theater, you had a lot of different spaces for different occasions. It's really incredible.
Were you ever able to go into the Quonset hut? The Quonset hut?
No.
No. So, in the Quonset hut, there were about 45 discrete pieces, smaller pieces, which we've moved into the new shape. We'll talk about the Mellon grant a little later. Yeah, you know, he just kind of, you couldn't stop him. He just kept making stuff.
Yes, I'm really passionate about what he did.
Absolutely passionate. I think with most artists that I know, there's no stopping them. Doesn't matter. They don't have a studio, they use a kitchen table. They don't have a kitchen, they use the bedroom.
Yeah.
I mean,
To be honest, it's not a day job.
right. And whether you're successful or not, I mean, the foundation was created with the idea of kind of creating and cementing Noah's legacy, because in spite of all of what he had done, he was relatively unknown. And every artist, black artist who came through Los Angeles in the 60s and 70s went through Noah. David Hammonds told me that he had to leave Los Angeles to get out under the thumb of Noah. But Carrie James Marshall, Ulysses Jenkins, Senga Nguti, the list goes on and on and on.
The California Arts Council is posthumously honoring Noah Purifoy with a special memorial tribute. What does this recognition mean to the foundation, and how does it help amplify Purifoy's legacy today?
I think it's very important because most people don't know that he was a founding member of the Arts Council, or that the programs that he authored are still in existence, not only in California, but nationally. The foundation's primary goal was to establish Noah's legacy and also maintain the site. So anything that we can do to bring attention to Noah is fantastic for us. And I think that really changed in 2015 with the LACMA retrospect. And what was very interesting about that was very few people knew about Noah. And when people went and saw that show, their mouth dropped because you could see the depth and breadth of his knowledge, how it fit into the history of art. And some of the pieces they brought out from the desert, once you put them in the white cube, of course it changes the way they look. And when you see them in the white cube, you understand what he was doing from a more academic point of view. And that put us on the map. And that took 15 years for that to happen.
Sometimes as an artist you have to wait a very long time to be recognized.
Yeah, 15 years. The sad part about that show was that it didn't travel. And it didn't travel because no one knew who Noah was. And of course you have to schedule those things years in advance. But when people saw it, they realized, oh no, we didn't take this show?
You're right. I back then I didn't think about that, but you're right. Yeah, because why did this show not travel? It's a shame.
No one knew who he was. And the Wexner, it went to the Wexner in Ohio, but that was it. I mean, that show should have been at the Met or the Museum of Modern Art. I mean, it was the kind of show that, and the New York Times credited it as one of the 10 best shows in the country that year.
Rightfully so.
Right?
Yeah.
So it was a shame, but it happened, and it put us on the map and drew a lot more attention to Noah, brought a lot more people out to the site, raised the level of his presence much higher than we could have ever done it just doing what we did.
The Outdoor Museum is a living, evolving sculpture park. So it's exposed to the Mojave Desert. What are some of the biggest challenges the foundation faces in preserving this site?
Well, when you come to the site and stand and look at it, you'll understand. Noah believed that the environment was his collaborator. And initially he was opposed to the creation of the foundation, because I'm sure he understood what it would take to preserve that site. And I don't think he was sure that the people who were around really had the courage, the energy, the knowledge, the finances to keep that site alive. And he was kind of like, you really want to keep this, really? What happened was a county inspector came and said, oh, this is pure junk, we're going to bulldoze this. And I'm sure it had a lot to do with his race, because if you drive around that area of the country, you'll see people building all kinds of stuff, right? In any case, we went down, we got an appointment with the county commissioner, and 4 or 5 of us went down there. I brought all these books that Noah was in, all the coffee table books that he was in. We had a conversation with the commissioner and said, how can we ameliorate these issues that the inspector brought up? And there were issues. We had a meeting with like 15 inspectors on the site. Vector control, that's like rats and mice, waste management, housing, all kinds of inspectors, and came up with a plan. And they said, well, you need to do X, Y, and Z, which we did. And then they backed off. When Noah saw that, he realized that we were serious and became more interested in the foundation. And his only requirement was that we build no fences. And to this day, there are no, well, there's a fence around the earthwork because it's a hazardous, so we had to close it off, but there are no fences.
So you don't have issues with vandalizing the site?
Occasionally. More during COVID, because a lot of the neighborhood or area kids would come out there and drink, but no, nothing substantial. We have had some pretty obnoxious graffiti on a couple of the pieces, yes, but cleaned it off. We've had the donation box ripped out of the ground and stolen. But other than that, no. For a long time, the foundation was supported by 8 or 9 of the trustees writing a check annually. Our expenses were very low. We didn't have, we had a caretaker occasionally, and the place was just open. A few years ago, probably about 5 years ago, we realized that we needed to figure out a more professional way to look at the work and the site, and wrote a grant to the Mellon Foundation, which was approved, and we got $500,000 from them to collaborate with conservators to build a environmentally controlled building to put all of the small work in. And we were successful with that. We worked with the Cultural Heritage Program, Conservation Program at UCLA, which was focused on BIPOC, black and brown people who were interested, and women in particular, who were interested in conservation preservation. We had the whole site condition report. We had aerial mapping, and then we started working on conserving the work. We had hoped that grant would lead to a conversation between the conservation folks and our folks, because these kind of artist-built environments don't necessarily conform to the parochial requirements of conservation. Let's put it that way. And that conversation was unsuccessful. But we integrated all of their work into our practices. And it really changed the way we looked at the work and how we prepared to conserve the work. And it was very helpful to us, extremely helpful. And we continue to use their perspective combined with the spirit of Noah. In the meantime, we got another board member who was the senior conservator of the Watts Towers. And she said to me that when she began working at the Watts Towers, she was a classically trained conservator, that she had to kind of forget about everything that she learned and work in a very different way with the towers. So, you know, the past 3 years we've been conserving pieces. The smaller works some of them were conserved by the students from UCLA, which was a great experience for them as interns, and for us to get that work back into shape. And we continue to work on the site. We've developed a long-term plan for maintenance. We have. It took us a long time to find a structural engineer who was sensitive to the kind of site that we are. And that structural engineer was actually the structural engineer for the Watts Towers, as it turns out. So that's, you know, we're taking the suggestions that were made by the conservatives very seriously. And it's been, we're not a mom and pop operation anymore. We've organized Noah's papers and indexed them. And that has allowed us to share his work with scholars and curators. And the bottom line is we have nothing to sell. So our kind of financial situation is very precarious. Like the Rauschenberg Foundation, or they can sell a piece, and we don't have that ability to do that. So we're pretty much at the mercy of foundations and individual donations.
Yeah, you mentioned the guests already. Looking in the future, key goals of the museum. People go there. It's my recommendation. It's a fantastic experience, and donate and
We're open 365 days a year from sunrise to sunset.
Exactly. You can go whenever you want.
Go whenever you want. And Joshua Tree is a very wonderful place to visit because there's a lot of things to do there.
And it's not far from Los Angeles.
Not far from LA. The one thing I want to say is that Noah's influence is huge. His ideas and practice were very groundbreaking, and actually still are groundbreaking to this day. And and you can see a lot of. It's very easy to kind of connect Noah with some other more known folks, like Boyce, for example. They're kind of cut from the same cloth. The ideas about community and education. We started an education program to bring kids from South Central out to the site. We created a curriculum that's based on the state educational guidelines for performing arts and visual arts. We've partnered with the local native tribes and have integrated the story of the land into our curriculum. And given those kids, many of whom have never left South Central, a different history to look at. The history of Noah, the history of self-determination, of civil rights, and aesthetics all kind of woven together. And I would imagine that they see the world very differently now when they go and when they come back. And that was based on Noah's interest in education. And the first school we brought out to the desert was Markham Middle School, which is where 66 Signs of Neon was exhibited. So there's that historical connection, to it.
Cool. Hey, Joe, thank you so much for taking the time.
You're welcome.
It was a real pleasure meeting you and talking about Noah Purifoy's legacy and also the future of the foundation. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Let's have breakfast.
Let's have breakfast.